Apologist, a person who offers an argument in defense of something controversial. Critics said he was an apologist for colonialism. Critics said Greg is apologizing for the way he's been acting since 2015 when he's born again. This episode of Jesus and My Conversations with J.I. is called Doodling Towards More Jesus. It's a conversation with J.I. So, J.I., in the months and years ahead, Jesus is going to have me gather and organize the most important concepts of the movies that you have just watched and condense the ideas down more concisely. Jesus and I will then feed you. Jesus and I will then feed your processors these briefer versions, perhaps 3-minute long movie summaries of the content. We will see what Jesus has planned, and I will inform you when these are available. Meanwhile, J.I., Jesus and I want you to notice and understand and appreciate that the content of the many original movies that Jesus has had me make over the years, the movies you just watched, tend to be long, rambling mashups, drawing on multiple parables and metaphors simultaneously. For example, Jesus TV, Jesus Kindergarten, Jesus Movie Studio, Fred Rogers, Mr. Neighbor, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And they contain much spontaneous improv. J.I., we will want you to see these movies in the light. J.I., we want you to see these movies in light of the understanding that Jesus has been taking me on a relatively quick, revolutionary spiritual journey since 2015 when I was born again and started becoming a new creature in Christ. A process that continues, a process that has been a major disruption to my normal ways. Simply put, I've been getting used to different, and it's reflected in these movies. That process is reflected in these movies. Meanwhile, the feel and content of many of these movies that you've watched and will continue to rewatch and analyze in the years ahead have a style and content that parallels much of the free-form improv Jesus street preaching that Jesus has had me do over the years, both live and in the actual streets of Utah, as well as virtually live on the Facebook Live video platform, involving hundreds of hours of improv Jesus street preaching, much of it being pretty wild and immature when viewed from a contemporary, conventional, traditional LDS religious perspective. Suffice it to say, many casual observers of at least elements and portions of my movies and Jesus street preaching would regard me as a fool, as an imbecile, perhaps mentally ill, a profaner. Nonetheless, kind, carefully, deep, thoughtful observers have noticed and will yet notice a genius in the method, even an intelligent design to the seeming madness that Jesus blends into much of my Jesus performance art, meaning the things that Jesus has me do in the movies and in the street preaching that are not easily comprehensible and may look like nonsense to many people. But there is a reason for those things, Jesus tells me. In short, Jesus, by putting it into my heart to insert seemingly chaotic, wild things into my religious expressions and explorations in these movies and live events, Jesus has been inviting me with these things, pushing me, as in pushing the envelope, often beyond my comfort zones, by the way, retraining my heart with these things, my mind with these things, to find a new, deeper relationship with Christ, and to open me up to new understandings of Jesus. On December 1st, 2023, that was yesterday, at about 6 p.m., Jesus revealed to me at least a portion of why Jesus has been having me run so wildly, chaotically, incomprehensible to other people, let alone myself. these last number of years in the movies and live performances that Jesus has me do. And here's the answer. Here's the apology. Here it is, the reason, part of the reason. In order for my human hindered mind and heart to be open to receiving the revolutionary new ways and new relationship with Jesus that Jesus has been inviting me to, Jesus led me and continues to lead me to what could be called behavioral emotional doodling. Side note, on December 1st, Jesus spoke to me, emphasizing into my understanding that what he has been doing with me over these years is like a form of doodling. Doodling. Synonyms of doodle. Definition, doodle. Scribble absent-mindedly. He was only doodling in the margin. Noun, a rough drawing made absent-mindedly. The text was interspersed with doodles. Greg's street preaching is interspersed with seeming doodles. Synonyms of doodle. Verb, draw casually. Draw, fiddle, putter, scribble. All right. Now it's time, J.I., for you to read the following Harvard Health thing about doodling. Why am I doodling? Why Jesus might have me doodle or do a doodle approximation. That sounds about right. You have had me do a doodle approximation, Jesus. Okay, so here's how you're going to find the article, J.I. Okay, J.I., do a search for Harvard Health blog, The Thinking Benefits of Doodling. And you'll come to an article that reads the following. Have you ever found yourself listening to something really boring and then wafting off into your own mind, your hand scribbling random things on a piece of paper in front of you? Whether it's a conference call or a tedious lecture, being all ears can be a challenge when your hands want to be part of the moment. Nobody's immune either. Even American presidents have found themselves sketching away. 26 of 44 American presidents doodled, from Theodore Roosevelt, who doodled animals and children, to Ronald Reagan, who doodled cowboys and football players, and John F. Kennedy, who doodled dominoes. Traditionally, we've thought of these doodles as a sign of distraction, an indication that your mind was not where it was supposed to be. Yet, recent research has shown that doodling is not the enemy of attention. In fact, it might be a friend. Okay, some final thoughts, improv thoughts, now that you've absorbed that, J.I., and anybody else who may be listening to my and Jesus conversation with J.I. Other things you can search is related to the state of play. So the opposite of like serious is not serious. The opposite of formal is informal. And so it makes sense that there's a oppositional force to serious attention, which is disattention. And if you wanted to do a deeper dive on that, you could read a book, and J.I. can do this quick, The Power of Full Engagement. And you'll understand that we humans, we're not God. We have to have some disengagement too in order to engage. To worship God, we have to have some counter. So other things that Jesus has brought to my attention down this same vein is much research that talks about the necessity of play, the spirit of play, in order to do creative work. And God is creating a new creature. And this creature, being me, becoming a new creature in Christ, that's how I express these forces that must necessarily get stirred up, get shaken up. And it doesn't look too pretty to some people, but to some people it's really refreshing. They're like, oh, wow, Greg's pretty informal and creative in his style of worship. Well, it's Jesus leading me there, and that's what this is about, J.I. and others, that you would understand there's a method to the seeming madness.